All right, welcome in to another episode of The Tool Shed with Clegg and Cross, brought to you by Rotoballer. This is episode 348. Thank you for joining us, Chris. This is our first live podcast. My 80 great co-host. How you feeling?
Pretty good. I mean, we rarely get to do podcasts together. The last time we did one was in Florida in a hotel room in a tiny little desk, so that was fun. And so to get to do a live show is pretty awesome. And thank you all for being in here with us. I'm looking forward to a good time with you tonight.
Yeah, that one we were shoulder to shoulder sharing a microphone. But we got it done, and it came out pretty solid. This time we have much better recording equipment. We got multiple mics here, got the whole setup. It's gonna be a fun time. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about, or all about, last year's rookie class, and kind of looking back at where some guys, the ADP for those rookies, where they kind of finish end of year rank, and kind of how we're looking at them for 2025. We'll do a little kind of a mock draft of sorts with the 2024 rookie class. But we'll start out with kind of looking at some of the ADP. Chris, you want to take that?
Yeah, so last year, looking at rookies, when it came to NFBC ADP, we took the March sample, had a better idea at that point of some guys that might debut or might break camp with teams. So kind of breaking that down, there were 4 hitters in the top 200 ADP last year. It was Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter, Jackson Churio, and Jackson Holliday. All 2 top 200 picks, and 3 pitchers with top 200 ADPs. Yamamoto obviously went quite high, Shoto Imanaga, and Mason Miller. And that turned out pretty good on the pitcher side. So, yeah, 7 total rookies last year with ADP in the top 200. It's always interesting. I think it's an interesting topic to talk about, and we kind of want to keep it redraft focused. A lot of our shows dynasty prospects, but looking at this idea, because many people always wonder, how do we handle rookies in a redraft league? And so we'll talk a little bit about that. With that being said, 18 rookies finished top 200 end of season rankings based on the Razzball Player Rater. So there were guys that came up mid-season that performed. There were players that nobody really expected to pop off, like a Jackson Merrill, for instance, who did break camp and had an incredible year. And that's likely to win Rookie of the Year, I think. It'll be interesting.
Like Tyler Fitzgerald.
If he was in the AL, it'd be a shoe-in, but the NL's actually got some fun options. So, yeah, the ADP was interesting to look at from last year, and then kind of we'll talk a little bit as we go on about this year, how some of those guys fare. But, Eric, you want to talk about some of those guys that finished in the top 200?
Yeah, so for the hitting side, it was both Jacksons, obviously, Merrill and Churio. They were, again, according to the Razzball Player Rater, 31st for Merrill, 47th for Churio. Those are the only 2 in the top 100. Langford just missed 103. Colton Cowser was 114. Raffaello, 124. Lawrence Butler, 127. That obviously would have been higher if he was, played the first half of the year. And then you got Mason Wynn, sneaky year for him, at 132. Julio Ramos, 144. And Michael Bush, 168. And a couple just missed, like Jacob Young, Wilyer Abreu, and Tyler Fitzgerald. But on the pitching side of things, it was, Imanaga was, they actually had Imanaga ranked higher than Skeens.
Yeah, that was
right,
interesting.
because of the higher volume.
There's also wins that factor into that, which is hard to quantify with pitching. So the wins totals definitely go into the Razzball Player Rater, and that sometimes skews a pitcher's player rater, said there.
Absolutely, yeah. Imanaga was 26. Paul Skeens, 30. Luis Heel, 78. Mason Miller, 111. Spencer Swellenbach, who I absolutely love, and I have on a lot of teams, thankfully, was 111. No, excuse me, 167. Tobias Myers, who kind of came out of nowhere. He was a sneaky good guy last year, 177. Kate Smith, phenomenal reliever for Cleveland, right behind him, 178. Mike, I'm sure you're, a big Kate Smith guy? Absolutely. Yeah, he was money last year. He's nasty. It's a great bullpen there. And then last 2 were another Cleveland reliever, Hunter Gaddis, and then Bowden Francis also had that dominance run where he kind of came out of nowhere as one of the best pitchers the last 2 months of the season. You kind of look back at ADP here. 2 of these pitchers were not even drafted in any, and there was 94 NFBC draft champions drafts in March last year. And the 2 that weren't even drafted in any of them, so no ADP at all, were Schwellenbach and Myers. And then you had Heel was near 500. Kate Smith was 750, so basically he probably got drafted in like 2 of them. of those 94. Bowden Francis was near 500. Gaddis near 750. And then on the hitting side, even Jackson Merrill was close to 300. And yeah, that went up later in the March when he was kind of looking like he was going to be the starter there for San Diego. Churio and Langford were near top 100 picks. Kauser was 417. Rafaela around 300. Butler post 500. There's a lot of good values here. So it kind of goes back to people are saying, oh, I don't want to take all that risk on, but there's what was it? How many were 7?
18.
Yeah, 18 finished in top 200. 7 were drafted there. So it shows that you can find those guys, but sometimes they're the guys that you don't expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing to look at, especially if you're in a draft champions league, is finding teams. So the Braves, for instance, are a team that gets aggressive with a prospect like a Schwellenbach, and they've got some guys this year like a Drew Hackenberg, who I think probably stands that chance. He jumped from high to triple this year, and his fastball ticked up about 3 miles an hour this year, and he's the guy the Braves have molded. He was a second-round pick out of Virginia Tech, and everybody was like, why did they take this guy second round? And he's on that track of Spencer Schwellenbach now. And so I look at teams like that. It's what team could be aggressive with prospects? And you look at opportunities like the White Sox or the Angels, where there's playing time opportunities. And I think that's the spots to profit. And then you obviously look at the top guys. There's going to be times when players bust. But at the end of the day, I mean, Jackson Churio, he outperformed ADP by a significant margin. Wyatt Langford, as bad as he was for a lot of the year, I mean, his ADP of 101, his Razzball player rank was 103, so right on. We know he finished the year quite strong, and that obviously had a big factor in that. But still, I mean, in a roto league, you got the value out of them. So I think there's a lot of value to be had with rookies in redraft leagues. And, a lot of times it's kind of I'm not sure I want to take on the risk. Jackson Churio was an immense risk. I mean, we're talking about a 20-year-old that was breaking camp with the team, and yet we look at what he did in the performance, and he totally backed it up. Is that going to happen every year? No. Is there going to be bust? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think there's plenty of value to be had on the rookie side. So get some audience engagement. How many of you guys drafted a rookie, we'll say in the top 100 of a draft this past year, by show of hands? Did anybody take any rookies in the top 100? What about the top 200? Okay, there we go. Who were some guys that y'all took, rookies that you drafted? Holiday was one. Holiday was a big one that a lot of people drafted. That one that didn't pan out. It's on the flip side of the equation, And
that's actually another question we had. So, Martin, I'll ask you. You took him. Are you still interested in a Jackson Holiday this year?
Well, his ADP is 204, I think, right now. So
yeah.
Absolutely. I was just talking about it the other day on a pod, and the value that he can return, the profit he can return at that ADP is enormous, especially if you can get him now at 204, because if we get into March and it's clear that he's going to break camp, I mean, his ADP is going to rocket. It's going to skyrocket up.
So
I
absolutely.
think he showed enough at the end to warrant taking a flyer on him. I mean, he's not going to push to where Langford was last year, but I mean, if you get him at 204 right now, absolutely take it.
Yeah, and Holiday's going to play every day. He's shoot in and second base for the Orioles. So anybody else, a prospect you took top 200 last year? Holiday's a good example, but any others? Paul Skeens. That one worked out tremendously. I mean, arguably the best pitcher in baseball. So, yeah, he fits that mold. I mean, I think he was. I don't have his ADP right in front of me, but I think Eric had it. Just injury. I mean, he was his end of year in 2023 and the postseason would set that up. We're that seemed like a no-brainer, and I know he ended up going pretty high. It's just the back injury, and that kind of scares me about him long term on that topic. So, unfortunately, he's a very talented player, but we see back injuries often be kind of an issue. So
yeah, no, it's everything. Obviously, baseball, everything you do.
Yeah.
Anything core related, back, ribs, it's always very risky.
Yeah.
His ADP right now is 267. Get him in a similar range for outfielders. J.J. Bleday, Wilyer Breu is out there. There's actually not many outfielders in that range. Jordan Walker's kind of down there. Roman Anthony is kind of an interesting bunch. But, yeah, I had a lot of Evan Carter this year too, and that did not work out well. You the one that said you had Paul Skeens?
Nice.
Now that he's a first-round pick, would you go after him this year as a first-round pick? No.
How many people would take him at his current ADP, which is 11.2? All right.
Now, is that a pitcher thing for all y'all, or is it just you don't think he's worth that much? Okay.
Yeah, and when you're talking about elite level hitters in that position, like Ronald Alvarez or someone along those lines, I won't take a picture of those guys.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fair.
If it's a package deal and Libby comes with her.
I feel you on that.
We can dream, can't we?
All right. The Jacksons were the rookie stars last year. Merrill, Churio, even Wyatt Langford. So who you taking this year? Just not even factoring ADP, but one more audience question. So the three options, Jackson Merrill, Jackson Churio, Wyatt Langford. We'll do show of hands. If you would take Jackson Merrill straight up, who would take Jackson Merrill? I mean, he finished the highest of any hitter last year, so there you go. Who's taking Jackson Churio? All right. And Wyatt Langford.
No one?
All right. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we really dive in because the ADPs are actually interesting. I have not really dug into the ADPs prior to this, and so I was kind of fascinated by some of the early ADPs on some of these guys. But what we're going to do is really look at this past year's rookie class, and we're going to look at it moving forward, how we would value these guys for 2025 and maybe even a little bit beyond because I think that, it's interesting. You have guys that pop up and break out. You have some guys that are they sustainable, like a Luis Hill that Eric mentioned. Like, is he a sustainable starter long term? Like, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. So we're really going to dive in there. What we did, go back and forth. We went and picked kind of a mock draft we did before where just looking at that rookie class from last year and kind of just our thoughts on those guys, the current ADP, and an evaluation moving forward. So I had the first pick, and then we go back and forth. I took Paul Skeens. His ADP is 11.2, which is by and far the highest of any rookie from the 2023 class. And so it's interesting. Would I take him at that ADP? No. But would I take him over some of the hitters in the class? Yeah, I think that the foundation that Paul Skeens sets is just tremendous. And the arm talent, obviously pitchers are risky. We know that. But the arm talent's unreal. And he was already an unreal pitcher, and then he comes in and adds a splinker. Made him just untouchable, really. And for a 22-year-old to step in and perform as he did last year. I mean, he had 170 strikeouts, 133 innings, a sub-2 ERA. I mean, it's just an impressive just arsenal all around, impressive command as well. I think Skeens is here to stay for the long term. You just hope he stays healthy. He's got that workhorse frame, though. Obviously, injuries are inevitable, but at the end of the day, like, I think of that rookie class, like Skeens is the best for 2025 and long term. So that's kind of where I went.
Yeah, so I went. You can go 5,000 different ways here. So many good rookies from last year, especially all in the National League, and that's where I went. I went with a pitcher myself and Yoshinobu and Yamamoto, who last year had an ADP, I think it was in the top 40 in March, and now this year, he pitched about 2/3 of a season. I mean, 18 starts this past year. It's down to near 60 now, which I think is pretty good. I mean, if you want to wait on your ace, I think he's a fine player to go. Or if you want to, double tap and get him as your SP2, great as well. Because he was phenomenal last year. He just missed a little bit of time, middle of the season, which really kind of limited him and his overall value. But you're looking at a guy that had a 3 ERA on the dot, 1.11 WHIP, and a K-minus walk rate of 22.5%. I mean, he would have been right up there in the top 4 or 5 National League Rookie of the Year voting if he didn't miss so much time and only had 90 innings. And you look at his pitches, you watch him pitch, and he had that rough kind of first couple of starts, but he really settled in after that and was one of the best pitchers in baseball for a couple of months until he got hurt, especially that 4-seam splitter curveball, which are kind of his 3 bread and butter offerings. He's got 3 pitches with a whiff rate above 33%. He can go 6-7 pitches deep, throws them to both righties and lefties. Good command and control, gets ground balls, really everything you want from ace caliber pitcher. And he's still 26. I like Yamamoto a lot, and I think I'll be getting a good amount of shares of him at his ADP next year.
So I had the choice of the question I asked you guys of the hitters that you would take, and I actually took Wyatt Langford. So I'm the oddball in the room apparently. Here's my argument for Langford. I love Churio as well, love Jackson Merrill, but I took Wyatt Langford because the talent, I believe, showed up at the end of the season, and obviously the last month and a half he was phenomenal. I mean, he had 10 home runs and 8 stolen bases in his final 30-some games. hit 289, had a 370 OBP, and that's the caliber player that we knew him to be at Florida. You know, seeing him a couple times when he was at Florida, just a tremendous talent, and his power. I mean, you look at the underlying metrics, and they were there. They improved all year. His average EV in the final month and a half was 91.5 miles an hour, and he got better. I think he was rushed. I don't think he was ready on opening day. He didn't have much development at all in the minors, and we saw his comfortability just get there towards the end of the year. I worry about some of the whiff with Churio. I think there's some swing and miss on breaking balls, which does concern me a little bit. Do I think Churio has the potential to go 30-30? Absolutely. Do I think Langford's the safer bet? Yeah, which is why I went there. His ADP kind of shocked me, 70 early on. Churio sits at 21. So it's a pretty big gap there, early, at least in the early ADP. I was kind of baffled by that.
Yeah.
And obviously, at those two prices, you know, I'm obviously going to take Langford. But straight up, I think I'd take Langford for 2025 as well. Not anything against Jackson, Churio, or Merrill, but that's kind of my reason, just believing that we saw the breakout start to happen. And I think it'll carry over into 2025, and he can be a consistent, 25, 30 home run bat that steals 20 bases. And I think with that floor, the floor is just much higher than Churio's, even though Churio may have the higher ceiling, which is kind of why I went that direction.
I would have as well. I'm very high on Langford. He was one of the best hitters in baseball the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. He was kind of right up there. I think he was like 5th in WRC plus in September or whatever it was. So yeah, I would have went that way as well. And that's no slight to either Jackson. I'm very high on both of those guys, and I'll take one here with Jackson Churio. You'll get what he did. He's always been a little more aggressive. So whenever he was at a new level, even in the minors, it took him a little bit to kind of get his feet under him. And once he did, he took off and he dominated. And that's kind of the same thing. He wasn't terrible to start his his major league career, but you saw him really take off in the second half, and he was a phenomenal fantasy asset. Finished 2020, 21 home runs, 22 steals. I mean, he's still only 20 years old. Right? I think he turns 21 in March?
Beginning of March, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll be 21 all of next year. He was the youngest player ever to go 2020. Just phenomenal stuff. And yeah, he's probably never going to have a high walk rate, but doesn't strike out that much. He had a better than league average strikeout rate. Contact skills were right around league average, slightly above for zone contact. Obviously he's got the power speed blend, 97th percentile sprint speed, above average quality of contact metrics, had a 45% hard hit rate, and again, all of this at age 20. So just imagine what he could do age 21, 22, 23. Could he go 30-30 this year? Absolutely. He's got the skills to do so. The ADP, and we're not doing this. We're not looking at ADP. We'll reference it. We're not basing our judgments here off of ADP per se, but the ADP for him is a little bit high, I think. So it leaves a smaller margin for error. I would love it more in the 30 to 40 range, though I know it wasn't going to be there. But yeah, I think you could see 30-30 this year from Jackson Churio. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Churio's a player that you have to take a risk on because he could return first round value or even a first overall value. That's the kind of upside you're looking at. So if you wanted Jackson Churio this year, you're going to have to pay the high cost, and is the risk worth it to you? It's second round. You'll have to decide that for yourself. But we know the upside's there for sure. I went Jackson Merrill. His ADP surprisingly high as well at 34. That one was a little higher than I thought it would be. But again, we're looking at probably the NL Rookie of the Year. I mean, he had a phenomenal year, 24 homers, 16 stolen bases. This is an interesting case because Merrill is a prospect that's had a lot of intrigue for a long time, but he's always had a severe flaw of ground balls. 60% ground ball rate throughout his minor league career, and to cut it to where it was 35% last year is actually interesting. We don't see that happen very much, but Merrill's slowly been able to kind of make tweaks in his swing to get to the appropriate launch angles to where he was able to get to home run power. We saw it this year. He's always hit the ball extremely hard. He's been a good athlete. If you were in the AFL, or if you were here 2 years ago, I think he was out here, and he put on a pretty impressive showing. And I just look at a Jackson Merrill and think that this is a profile that can stick. He's 21 years old. He'll be 21 on opening day next year. To do what he did, I think with the lesser pedigree of all the big names last year, just really impresses me, and the fact that he's made those tangible tweaks that we've seen, to be able to lift the ball more often, to get to the pull side more often. Those are things that he struggled with, but he's strong zone contact rate, strong overall contact rate. Yeah, he's going to chase a little bit. He's a pretty aggressive swinger, but I think chase rate is it something we sometimes look too much into because a hitter like him is making so much contact out of the zone too, and quality contact out of the zone. Like, it can be okay. Like, I watched Jack Caglione this week, who has, it's always been cited, 40% chase rate in college, 40% chase rate in his debut. But Caglione makes a lot of contact out of the zone too, and he hits the ball hard out of the zone. So players can make that work with higher chase rates, especially when you're counteracting it with good in-zone contacts, and Merrill did that. I mean, 88% in-zone contact. So I think he's certainly here to stay as well. How much higher ceiling does he have? Like, does he have much more in the tank? I mean, potentially. I think he gets to 30 home runs just given the consistent launch angles, the power that he's shown. So that wouldn't shock me at all, and he's going to consistently hit for good average just given he's been a very good contact hitter his entire career. So I took Merrill after Churio, 34 ADP, high price, but again, it's the price you pay when a 21-year-old comes up and performs like he did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, Ian Diaz is a good example of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
His chase rates were probably, 40?
He's like the highest chase rate in baseball.
Yeah, like low 40%, but I think he had a zone contact of upper 80s, and overall contact was above 80, so that's why he hit. Did he hit 300 this year or close to it?
Close to it.
It was like 290 or something like that. But so now it gets kind of opens up a little bit. I'm going James Wood though. Speaking of high ground ball rates, that's
Can't
the big.
pull the ball.
I know that's the biggest issue with James Wood. Like, James Wood obviously is a large human being, and I say that in a good way. Like, he is large but very strong, good frame. He's not like he's overweight or anything like that. And 6'7", 235. He hit the ball very hard in his debut. 93 mile an hour average exit velocity, 52% hard hit rate. Like, we're talking about some of the best metrics in baseball there. 10.5% barrel rate as well. But a little bit of a strikeout issue, but 29%. Ground ball rate was 55%. That's kind of been an ongoing trend for him. That's why he never had the massive home run totals in the minor leagues, even though he's always hit the ball extremely hard. But he had 9 home runs last year, 14 steals, hit 264 in 336 plate appearances. That's going to be the big thing. Like, he could be 30-30 next year as well. I mean, even though he's a big guy, he's a good runner. I mean, he doesn't get thought of that way because he has the massive power. And we kind of don't think of these bigger guys as being a big stolen base threat, but he could easily go 30 home runs, 25-30 steals, while providing good across the board production elsewhere as well, if he trims that ground ball rate. And that's easier said than done. We say, oh yeah, if he lifts more, yeah, that's a big if, and that's something that has to be like a mechanical kind of change, and usually in the off season. It's hard to do during the season, so hopefully he can kind of work on that, because he could hit 40 home runs. So that's the power we're talking about here. But he's another one you're going to have to pay up to get him, because his ADP is top 50 as well. And these are super early. It's been like, 10, 11 drafts, whatever it's been. So very early. These are going to fluctuate a lot. But 45 already. Usually they go up, not down with these types of guys. So if he comes out, beginning of spring training, hammering the ball, that's going to jump into the 30s or maybe even the 20s. So you have to get on him early if you want him. But all the upside in the world is hopefully, fingers crossed, he can trim that ground ball a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like I'm cheating with my next guy. Same with Yamamoto. I took Shota Imanaga, which his value seems really good. I was really wrong about Imanaga this year. I really thought the fly ball rates would be an issue in Wrigley. I mean, he's a heavy fly ball pitcher and has been his entire career, and he made it work. I mean, he had a stellar year. He had a sub-3 ERA, threw 173 innings, was extremely good. I mean, it's a unique fastball from his release point where it's high ride. He locates it extremely well. He misses bats. I think we all know about Shota at this point. I don't need to go into detailed analysis. He's 31 years old at this point. But for redraft, I think there's good value still. He was a rookie technically last year. I mean, his ADP's at 75, and you look at kind of the starting pitching crop, and you look at his production and what he did this year, and I say that's kind of interesting to still see him down that far. He finished 26th overall player last season, and he's still going that late. So I look at Shota as a potential early value among the rookie class and think that there's some value to be had. He doesn't need to perform at the level he did this year to return value at 74, in my opinion. He can have some regression. There's going to be natural regression, I think, just given the fact that he is a fly ball pitcher. But I do think there's still plenty of value to be had at that spot. So look at Shota. I think it's a very good value spot there where he's going currently.
Yeah, no, I would love to get Shota as my SP2, SP3, somewhere in that range for sure. This is my first player that didn't have a ton of time in the major leagues last year, but I'm going Junior Caminero from Tampa Bay. ADP for him is right outside top 100 right now. I kind of thought it may be a little bit lower in the 130 to 140 range, but it's 108.2 right now. But finally, looks like he's going to be the full-time third baseman for Tampa Bay. Isaac Paredes is gone. Christopher Morel just really isn't a good defender, so it looks like
or hitter.
Or hitter after he, that was a lose trade. But Caminero, and he's just as young as these other guys. He's 21 years old. Always had some of the best power in the minor leagues, and he showed that. It was only in glimpses. He only had 177 plate appearances, but he had a barrel rate right around 12%, hard hit right around 45%. There's no big strikeout issue. He's been right around league average so far. Didn't really have any issues with that in the minor leagues. He's not going to provide much speed, if any at all. Maybe a rogue steal here and there, 2, 3, 4, something like that. But over a full season, this could easily be a 30-homer guy with a respectable average. So I think that's something that could be in the cards for 2025. The lineup around him is not great.
Tampa will always have a good lineup, though. I mean, it's just it happens. They just find guys that they make it work.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how that looks. Come spring training and opening day. But I think the power's legit. He could hit 30 home runs next year and kind of become another top 10 third baseman. That position is getting pretty deep, and he could be the next one that kind of joins the elite ranks here.
Yeah, and there's some interesting knocks on Caminero. He gets a lot of flack for his swing path, but I'll be honest with you, when you hit the ball as hard as Caminero does, it doesn't really matter. Like, he may run higher ground ball rates, but Caminero runs elite exit velocities, like top of the scale. When you see his 9th percentile, it's up there with the elites in the major league. And I think swing path matters less and less the harder you hit the ball. He's going to get to power. It's funny because I saw him a decent bit when he was in high A, and he had a lot of opposite field home runs, and people took it as a knock that he couldn't pull the ball. This guy is, as young as he is, hitting opposite field moonshots. I'll gladly take that player and bet on him when he gets the ability to pull the ball. Now, I think Caminero is going to be really good. I worry very little about the swing path, but I do see people kind of critique that. But when you hit the ball like he does, it doesn't really matter. So,
right.
This guy that I'm taking next, Lawrence Butler, I was actually surprised he was still a rookie this year. He barely was under the threshold in 2023. So he was rookie eligible for 2024, and he had a phenomenal second half. Oakland actually had a lot of really good hitters this year. They were cooking something in the second half, especially. Had a fun team. I think they're going to be a sneaky team this year, actually. Got guys like Nick Kurtz out here. He'll be up quick. But they've got some fun guys, and Lawrence Butler fit that mold. From July 1st forward, 300 plate appearances, he hit 20 home runs and stole 14 bags. It was phenomenal. Hit 300. This is a guy that I never imagined would hit 260 in the majors, but he consistently has added just contact skills. His contact rate in 2023 jumped about 10 percentage points from 2022 to 2023 in the minors. 10% jump in contact, and it stuck this year. I'm fully buying a Lawrence Butler because the skill set, one, he's power, he's speed, he's got good enough contact at this point, and they're moving to a ballpark where the ball's going to fly. They're going to be in Sacramento, and all those hitters are going to thrive this year. Butler's early ADP is right behind Caminero, actually at 110. It's actually a good value spot, and I'm surprised it's there just given the fact of what he did in the second half, how good he was. And I think that you look at him and you say, I don't see him hitting 300 like he did in the second half. He hit 260 for the year. That shows you the combination of basically the two halves. But there's a reasonable expectation you could hit 270. And if he gives you 25 homers with 20 steals with a 270 average, sign me up at pick 110. So I was very off Lawrence Butler for a lot of his prospect years, and then last year something clicked and he learned how to make contact. And I really think he's here to stay at this point, and that's going to be a more fun lineup than they had in the past. So I like Butler a lot.
Yeah, him and Brent Rooker were just almost as good as Soto and Judge for a part of the season for like a 2-month stretch, and like legit. That's they were absolutely phenomenal.
Rooker's a great personality too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Rooker's baseball mind is so good. Like listening to them talk and like what they let him do at the World Series was phenomenal. By the way,
him and Vinny P doing those things.
Yes, yeah.
I wish more players did that. I'm going to Chris's team here, the Atlanta Braves. Spencer Strellenbach absolutely saved like half my pitching staffs this past year. Luckily, I was able to get him in a few and had him in a few, best balls, DCs, etc. Just like as a late pick because he was absolutely phenomenal. 21 starts, 335 ERA. WHIP was barely over 1 at 1.04. Only had a 4.6% walk rate, 25.5% strikeout rate. All the ERA indicators were right there, so like there was no flukiness going on. It looks like his xERA was up near 5 or anything like that. He came up in the Braves. They really needed an arm, kind of middle of the season or early part of the season, and he stepped up and was one of their best pitchers this year, maybe their best pitcher.
Yeah.
Overall. Obviously, Lopez as well was phenomenal and Fried and etc. But deep arsenal, 6 pitches that he throws at least 6.5% of the time. But another thing, you heard me mention this, several times. I love pitchers that use all of their arsenal to both righties and lefties. I'll be like, this guy's a 4-pitch guy, but he only uses 2 to lefties. Well, then he's not really a 4-pitch guy, at least not fully. So the fact that he does that, is really encouraging. He has 2 pitches, curveball and splitter, at a whiff rate above 40%. Not many pitchers in baseball could say that they had 2 pitches with a whiff rate above 40%. He gets ground balls. The walk rate, he's a phenomenal command and control guy. He locates his pitches extremely well. I can't wait to see what he's going to do over a full 30+ start season. And the fact that he probably would have won if he was in the American League.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that about like 7 different guys in the National League this year. But what did he even finish? Oh, they haven't done the National League yet, right? No, they said the AL. So he'll probably finish 6th,
probably
something like
the
that.
NL crop was very good.
Yeah, something like 6th, maybe even 7th in the National League, and he probably would have won American Rookie of the Year with how he pitched. So he's a guy where I am definitely buying wherever I can this year. And his ADP 111 so far, which I actually thought was going to be top 100. So if I can get him as like my SP3, absolutely, because he's got SP2 upside.
He's the 47th pitcher off the board right now, so it's kind of interesting. Just given what he did, like that surprises me given the hype that rookies get. Like young guys come out and perform, it's like
especially the ones that come up and do well, and he did extremely well.
Yeah.
So
he already had TJ, like it's out of the way. It's interesting, like he threw 31 total innings in college. Like he was the shortstop, and the Braves identified him. The Braves amateur scouting is phenomenal. Tidbit: the Braves run 0 pro scouts. Actually, they run all on the amateur side, and they killed the draft. And they saw Schwellenbach and thought he could be a pitcher, and he pitched a little bit, had TJ, and then comes back mid-year last year, and yeah, the rest was history. So I like Schwellenbach a lot. Obviously, I think there's a lot of talent and upside there. I went with Mason Miller. I mean, it's just a dominant arsenal. When we're looking at fantasy, like there's value there from a reliever standpoint. The environment that he's going to be pitching in kind of stinks now, going from the Coliseum to Sacramento. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but we know Miller's elite. He's one of the best closers in the game. Health does worry me. I mean, that's been an issue his entire career, dating back to his college days. It's always been concerns with health, and in the back of my mind, that still worries me. ADP of 58, you got to pay up for him. I'm not sure in an actual draft setting I would pick 58 for him. There's other closers I'd look at that I really like, including one that we may get to later that I think is a really good value. But yeah, I mean, Miller's got elite stuff. I mean, fastball sits 100. It's kind of wild. He's a nasty slider. He's got great stuff. So, in this crop, I mean, Miller obviously finished as one of the better pitchers last year. And I think that you get saves where you can, and he's kind of locked in that as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, another one of those exciting young Oakland players. And they went from having nobody to talk about to having several guys that are
people would have laughed if you said that a couple years ago. Exciting young Oakland players, and now it is. I mean, they've got some guys. Can we even call them Oakland anymore?
No, they're Sacramento Athletics of Oakland. I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm still bad about like putting Oakland in my write-ups or tweets about a player. Like, can't do that.
Nope, not anymore. We got a few outfielders here in a row. starting with Dylan Cruz, came up a little bit last year, had 132 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 12 steals. Slash line wasn't great, but I'm not really worried about that too much. The intangibles are there with a guy like Dylan Cruz. Dating back to his time at LSU in college, he was one of the best collegiate bats. That's why he was taken number 2 overall in 2023, and he was up just over a year after he was drafted. He's such a advanced bat, and he didn't have the massive minor league numbers, but again, look at under the hood. He had a K rate under 20% as a rookie. That's pretty good. He's a 93rd percentile sprint speed. He had 45% hard hit rates. Not many have that combination of that hard hit rate above about 45%, K rate below 20%, and a sprint speed 93rd percentile. That's a pretty rare combination. But kind of another Washington ground ball issue here. His ground ball rate was 56.4%. He's got the power to hit 30. Absolutely, and he's got good contact skills as well. Now he was 86% in zone contact, which is about 4% above league average, which is about 82%, and he was about 2.5% above league average in overall contact as well. Not a guy that chases too much. He's just a really good hitter. It's like all those kind of pieces are there, even though the stats haven't been great. They haven't been terrible either, but he's got to play, and they're gonna give him and Wood all the run in the world along with Abrams. It's a fun young team. See what else they can put together. Well, maybe Abrams.
Abrams might be in the casinos.
Yeah, he stops gambling at 4 a.m. and
he might play.
Getting benched, but in theory, that's gonna be a really fun young team with all those young hitters they have there. So if Cruz went out and went 20-20 and upset for more this year, I wouldn't be shocked at all at that. And his ADP is pretty fair right now. Like, these next 3 guys are actually all very close in ADP, right around like the 155 to 160 range, and Cruz is at 158. So that's probably obviously depends how you put your team together, but you're probably looking at outfield 3 usually in that range, maybe even outfield 4. So yeah, if I can get him upside play that late in my draft, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's funny to watch people jump off bandwagons really quick. Like the case with Cruz, people jumped off very quick, but Cruz, he wasn't a superstar immediately like everybody thought. He was a college star. He was one of the best college hitters of the last 10 years or so. And just because he didn't get off to the fastest start, people were like, oh, he's no good. But Cruz may never be a superstar, but I think he's a consistent above average regular that provides a lot of ways. But next guy I think could be a star, and that's Jason Dominguez, who is going right at the same ADP. Let the kid play. I don't know why they're running Verdugo out there. Like, gosh almighty, Verdugo just isn't it.
So, hey, he can pimp a home run down 2 runs really well.
Yeah. Verdugo's gone. I mean, oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Dominguez can hit, though. We know that. I mean, he had some injuries this year, but when he's healthy, he mashes. He's 9th percentile exit velocity was 108 between all levels this year. Like, that's borderline elite. His in-zone contact was like 87% between all levels. That's borderline, elite. That's a good combo of skills to have. And, while the body's kind of interesting, like I always wonder, like, how much he'll actually run. Like, I do think there's still enough speed there for him to steal you some bags too. It's interesting because his body progression over the years has been so weird to watch. Like, he went from like the skinny kid that signed to looking like Aaron Donald. I don't remember if you seeing those pictures of him in spring training when he looked like a defensive end. He was massive, and he's got the body back in shape, and he's just going to perform. I think that they give him most likely everyday run next year, and depending on what happens in the offseason. But I think that Dominguez is more than ready to step in and be an everyday guy. He gives you some power, gives you some speed, and a good average, and pick 159, just like Cruz at a range, is a pretty good spot. So,
yeah, no, absolutely, and he's gonna be have a good ballpark to hit in half the time at least, and good, even if he's hitting 6th, 7th, whatever. Yankees lineup is always pretty damn good throughout. So, I like Jason a good amount as well. I'll keep it right in the American League East. Go to the Baltimore Orioles with the American League Rookie of the Year, Colton Cowser. Again, wouldn't have won it if any of those other guys were in the American League. But, this is no slight to Cowser. He had a pretty solid year, 24 home runs, 9 steals, 77 runs scored. The profile is kind of all over the place. Look at some of his sliders on Savant. he's either really good at something or really not good at something. And so, yeah, exactly.
It's tricky.
Yeah, a lot of blue, a lot of red, and that's why you have the prominent peaks and valleys throughout the season. We saw that from him, where he had a few weeks where he looked like a top 50 player. Then you have a few weeks you're like, do I drop this guy? He was so bad for certain parts of the year. But overall, again, it was a good rookie year in the end. I mean, he hits the ball hard. He had a 13.5% barrel rate, 46% hard hit rate. He's a good runner as well. So 25, 30 home runs. And he's a lefty, so he doesn't have to worry about the deeper left field dimensions as much at Camden Yards. So that's definitely a nice little boost there. 25, 30 home run bat, 10, 15 steals, something like that. But just where does the average wind up? Because it's a lot of strikeout, a lot of swing and miss, near 31% strikeout rates this past year. Contact rates were below average, not terrible. Doesn't chase a lot either, so that's not a huge issue. But I don't think he's ever going to be more than probably a 250-ish hitter. So, but if you take that into consideration, build around that, which that's not even terrible anymore. We've seen averages kind of come down a little bit, where 250 is not as bad as it used to be. So, but if you're getting 80+ runs, if you're gonna get 25, 30 home runs, 10+ steals, I think you can live with that. And surprising that his ADP wasn't a little bit higher, still outside the top 150. I think he could be a guy that's kind of an annual top 100-ish player or close to it, given what he can do offensively and the good lineup. I think that lineup's going to be really good long term. It already is. And if Holiday gets it going, Kobe Mayo comes up and gets it going, could be just an absolutely loaded lineup top to bottom. So, yeah, Colton Cowser here.
Yeah, he finished 114 overall last year, so it's interesting to see his a rookie that performed to have the ADP there is kind of interesting. So, I'm cheating a little bit. This guy did debut at the very end of the year with Jackson Jobe. I don't think a team like the Tigers brings up Jobe at the end of the year without the intentions to run him out opening day 2025. I mean, obviously, at that point in the year, they knew they were pushing for the playoffs. They needed an arm like that. But at the same time, this is a guy that's ready. I mean, we saw what he did last year. 2023 was phenomenal. He walked 6 total batters all season, which is absurd to think about. His walk rate spiked tremendously this year, but the overall strike rate was nearly identical, which is interesting. So, it wasn't like he had a command issue this year. He didn't just lose the ability to throw strikes. He was still throwing strikes. It was just interesting to see, sometimes those things happen. He obviously wasn't going to be a guy that walked 3% of hitters like we saw, but he's also not going to be a guy that walked 12% of hitters like we saw this year. The command is really good with Jobe. He locates his pitch as well. He's upper 90s fastball. It's a cutter change sweeper. Jobe, I think we all know, is one of the best pitching prospects in the game. He's going pick 234. And so this is probably a time to capitalize early. If you're in an early draft, if you want him, I think his value probably only goes up as we get to spring. If he's pitching well in spring training, that ADP is going to rise. I think that more likely than not, he makes 30 starts with Detroit next year. Even if he's down for, you think if he's down for a month, he can still return value there. The Skeens route we saw last year, Skeens came up. I'm not going to say Jobe is that talented, but I'm sitting here going to tell you that Jobe's arsenal is extremely talented, and I think there's plenty of room to profit there with Jackson Jobe, pick 234. So yeah. I took him over some guys with rookies with ADPs much higher than him. So
yeah, including this guy who's on the same team, Parker Meadows, who's going. I think where's his ADP?
154.
Oh yes, he's in that outfield. There's a lot of rookie outfielders in that 150 to 160 range. You look at the overall line for Parker Meadows, not great, because he was early part of the year he was terrible. I think he was hitting. Actually, I have it up right here. It's the end of April. He was hitting 100. Yeah, and then he got sent down on May 6th when he was hitting a 0.96 with higher OBP than slug, and he was down in the minor leagues for a couple months. But he made the adjustments, came back, and was really good. When he came back on August 3rd, he played in the last 47 games of the year. 296, 340, 500 slash line. He had 21 extra base hits, 6 home runs, 5 steals. So he was on, right around a 2020 or so pace. And he's got to hit, high in the order for Detroit. That could be that's a sneaky good lineup as well. a lot of good young hitters there, especially if they get Carpenter for a full year, and Torkelson can kind of be something decent. He's going to show glimpses of that, but so Meadows has a chance to score a lot of runs. 90-plus runs. He's always been a good OBP guy as well. Again, not the flashiest profile. There are some warts in there. K rate can get a little high at times, but solid power speed blend. Walks at a decent clip for the most part. Doesn't hit too many ground balls. Contact rates are right around league average, even a tick above league average. So again, it's not the sexiest profile, but potential 20-20 with 90 runs and an average OBP you can stomach. I think that's pretty solid value where he's going.
Yeah, and Parker Meadows made a tangible swing change when he was down. I think that's worth noting. When a strong performance in like August, September is backed by something that was tangible, then it always kind of provides good insight and like you can believe in it. And he really worked on changing the swing. He was dropping his hands. He talked a little bit about it in an interview he did with Evan Petzold of Detroit Free Press, who's a really good reporter. And he talked about it. His hands were dropping. He had to work to keep those up more through the zone, and it really paid off when he came back. So I'm buying back in on Meadows for sure. This guy's interesting. PCA. He had another strong second half, but I think the stolen bases are where the value is. I look at a guy like PCA, and I think he can give you a big boost in stolen bases. His ADP is actually higher than I expected at 142, so you got to pay a pretty penny for a guy with a little bit of a risky profile. The fact that the contact, the chase is quite high. Like, he has some warts, and that's a little bit scary when you look at it, but he stole 27 bags last year in 410 plate appearances. So, he didn't have a lot of opportunities, just given that, especially early on, he wasn't on base often. But when he's on base, he's stealing. I think could be a legit 40 stolen base threat, maybe even more. And we saw some of the power come out in the second half. He's still extremely young. He's 22 years old. So I think there is still a little more juice in there, and I think PCA could be a 15 home run bat. And if he's a 15 home run bat that steals you 30 bases, that's got a lot of value in himself. And if the average continues to tick up, which hopefully he can be a 250 hitter, then I think that's really where you're getting the value, is that that he's going to provide a little bit of power with the stolen bases. I kind of look at it like a little bit of an early career Jarren Duran, kind of the path that he followed where he had those concerns and warts, and Duran added more power. He still ran consistently, and we saw the hit tool kind of come around. I'm not saying that PCA is going to become a hit tool guy like Duran has become, because Duran's contact now is extremely good. But PCA is going to be on the field because he's a Gold Glove center fielder. So he's going to be out there every day, and there's value in that, and we know he's going to play. And I think with those wheels he's got, he's going to provide you the stolen bases you need.
Yeah, no, with Jarren Duran, remember he had to find that middle ground. I saw him when he came up through the minor leagues, when he was more of a hit and speed guy with a little bit of power. And over the pandemic, he got really big at the alternate site and tried to be a home run hitter. Then he found that middle ground the last year or two, which really turned him into one of the better outfielders in the game now. So I'm not saying PCA has that same upside, but he's definitely has some a lot of good, but some things to work on. This will be our last one here, and obviously there's so many other names that we couldn't even get to in this. There's so many good rookies last year. Guys like Jared Jones, Luis Heel, we're not even going to talk about, at least not too in depth here. But I originally had Ceddanne Rafaela on here, but I got to pivot. But don't worry, I'm going with Jackson Holiday, because I feel that's true. I feel a little better about Jackson Holiday. Rafaela is fun, and he did a little bit of everything last year. But there's a lot of red flags in that profile as well. And who knows where if Red Sox trade him, if he turns into a not a full-time player once all the young guys are up, or the prospects. But Jackson Holiday was really weird because he was like the can't miss guy, the guy that's supposed to win batting titles, and he might still do that. He's been up for not even 1 year, 208 plate appearances. When he hit 189, he was terrible. Got sent down, came back up, was pretty good, and then got terrible again. It's weird because it's nothing we really saw from him in the minor leagues. I mean, Baseball America, the gold standard of prospects, they gave out 2 70-grade hit tools, which is phenomenal, and he was one of them. He's supposed to, again, be a 300 hitter, and I still think that guy is in there. I mean, I think he looked like he was pressing too hard. High expectations, and he was only 20 years old this whole season. So I think this pressure got to him, and he kind of like Jared Kelenic a few years ago when he was kind of trying to be the savior of Seattle. It was a little bit different situation with Holiday, but I think you're going to see a much better Holiday this offseason. I mean, he has a baseball family to go work with. He had, with obviously, Matt Holliday, his younger brother, who could be a number 1 pick next year, and one of the best player development organizations in baseball with Baltimore. So he's got so much good around him and so much talent that, I can't sit here and say, oh, look at this metric, look at that metric, because the metrics in the majors, he hit the ball hard. I'll give him that, but he had 33% strikeout rate. Contact skills were below average. So there's not a lot of stats I can throw out there like, oh, that's why he's going to get better. But I'm just going off of what we saw from him in the minor leagues. I'm like, he's better than this. And if he gets, like Martin was saying, if he gets that run at second base, which it looks like he probably will, let him settle back in and show what he can do. And he might have a 2020 guy end of the year. He's still got that upside in him. So, past pick 200 or on pick 210, I'll gladly take a shot on that.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show the gap between AAA and the majors is larger than it's ever been.
Huge, yeah.
Holiday's struggled vastly with fastballs in the majors. Quality of fastball in AAA is just not there. You have some guys that can throw hard, but that doesn't mean the quality of the fastballs actually could. And there was definitely a hole in Holiday's swing against fastballs. Do I think it's correctable? Absolutely. I mean, Holiday is interesting because his approach is so good, and sometimes it's almost too good, where he's taking too many pitches. He's getting himself in bad counts. I think that's what happened a lot this year, is that he wasn't getting those pitches that he got in the minors, where he was able to pick his spots so well and mash. Major league pitching can't get away with that, and so he's gonna have to learn and adjust from there. We want to do some Q&A with you guys if you have any questions for us, but I'll just read through the last few guys we had mentioned. I took Jared Jones next, his ADP 132. Eric took Luis Hill, ADP 164. I took Porter Hodge, which I think is a great closer target. He came out at the end of the year and dominated with the Cubs. They trust him. I mean, they put him in big spots all year. He's going at pick 213. That's where the value of you get good closers. Like, that's where you profit. Eric took Tyler Fitzgerald at his ADP is 242. I got Spencer Arrighetti. He's going 231. He had a tremendous year. I think he was one of the more underrated, slept-on players. Arrighetti had a great second half, too, and just built and got better all year.
Yep.
And then Eric rounded out with Kobe Mayo. He's going at pick 321. We know the upside with Mayo. Power is tremendous, but I don't know if he has a spot. I really am not sure.
That's why I didn't take him earlier.
Yeah, I'm avoiding Kobe Mayo, honestly, for 2025 because he's blocked. Not because of his people already started dropping him in prospect rankings because he came up and was bad for the tiny little sample, 7 games, something like that. But I'm not changing my mind on him as a player, and still don't think he has a spot right now. Maybe he's traded. I have no idea, but I'm not touching Mayo for redraft at the present moment. Could that change by spring? Absolutely. So that kind of wraps up that portion. If you guys have any questions you want to ask, we'd love to answer those. It can be about prospects. It can be about these rookies. It can be about anything you want answered, and be glad to answer your questions.
I have a few questions.
Do you want to come ask in the mic? We can get it recorded. Yeah. This one work?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have a few questions, quick ones, hopefully
sure.
quick.
Yeah, no, you're
first
good.
of all, Yamamoto, what's your what's the innings pitched for Yamamoto next year? What's your anticipation there?
So he was at 90 this year. I think you could see that jump up to like 160, 170. Really? Yeah, I think so. As long as he shows that he's healthy in spring training. I mean, he's healthy now. So yeah.
I think they used him strategically this year. I mean, I know he was hurt. I'm not discounting his injury or suggesting it wasn't a legitimate injury. But I think the way that they deployed him, was for the playoffs in the World Series. Is that something that you think that the Dodgers maybe figured something out here? Hey, okay, let's limit his innings in this regular season and deploy him again like we did this year.
Yep.
So I'm a little skeptical on his innings is really what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the innings per start, and like early in the year he was like 6, 7. He threw 8 in the start in May, so that gives me a little hope that it was more injury related later on, and they kind of built him up coming back. And obviously, they wanted him healthy for the World Series. But, I mean, you look at his history, his years prior in Japan. In 2023, he threw 171. The year before, 193. 2021 was 193.2. So he's had the durability in the past. And so I think that it wouldn't be like some guys, like saying this prospect would make this leap from 90 to 160. Like, he's shown like he's consistently been able to do it.
Yep.
The Dodgers do get guys back, so it's like they'll have more. They didn't have the depth this year. They did. They were lucky they had the depth they did. But like you hear him saying, they had a full injured list of starters. And so I still think that he could go out and throw 150, 160. I wouldn't worry too much.
On Schwellenbach, obviously he's their number one prospect pitcher. But where is A.J. Smith-Shawver and the Waldrop?
Yeah.
And do you see them as on par with Schwellenbach, or do you think that Schwellenbach is a better pitcher? What's your prognosis or projection on those two?
I think AJ is as good of a pitcher. AJ was hurt this year, and they did some weird things with his arsenal. They gave him a sweeper, and they completely pulled the rug on it, which was bizarre. I would say they kind of screwed with his development when they brought him up when they did last in 2023. He was 20 years old. He went from high A to the majors in the matter of a month and a half. And I think it really just messed with his development, honestly. He gained 3 miles an hour of velo in the spring. And I think that being able to harness the fastball when you make that kind of jump is pretty substantial. So it's like, okay, now I've got to figure out this pitch is playing different. So I got to figure out how to locate it. He allowed a lot of home runs that he hadn't in the past, and a lot of it was on that four seam, which is been good previously. So I think that he gets back to that. I think right now he's got a legit chance to be the fifth starter out of camp. They still love him internally. I still think he's the best pitching prospect in the Braves system. I would still be in on him because he's got a 4-pitch arsenal. He's got the command. I think the home run issue kind of fixes itself. And so, yeah, I'm buying back in on A.J. Smith-Shawver. I almost picked him in this. He's going at like pick 450. And I think he's got a legit shot to break camp and be in that fifth rotation spot. So I'm still very in on Smith-Shawver. Waldrop hurt this year. Everybody's out on Waldrop. Everybody just says immediately he's a reliever, but his strike rate actually improved all year. His walk rate went down all year. Waldrop made substantial strides as a pitcher despite having some injuries too. I think Waldrop's still really good. So I'm very interested. I don't know. I would say A.J. Smith-Shawver is the more developed and ready one for 2025.
Yep.
But I wouldn't discount Waldrop to be up midseason and potentially in that rotation.
Yeah, he could help in the second half maybe, especially if there's some injuries. But yes, I think Smith-Shawver is the better bet for 2025.
And last question on Lawrence Butler. You don't think – so he made some adjustment. I don't remember exactly what happened that helped him turn around. He mentioned something about his feet, like the way that his batting stance, and he stayed in the zone. He made some real significant adjustments, but then there were also moments where he did struggle a little bit in the second half, despite his robust numbers.
Sure.
You don't think that Lawrence Butler is fluky what he did last year in the second half? You think that's really a legitimate? He can do that over 162. That's my last question. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe he won't be on that same pace. Like he was almost like a near 40-30 pace. So I don't think he's going to be like a top 25 player, but he's got above average power. He's got above average speed. Doesn't strike out too much. Contact rates, are around league average. There's no real red flag in the profile. So I think he could be a top, 50 to 60 player or so. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going on a 2-year sample of contact rate being above average. Like 2022, I pretty much wrote him off because he was running like 65% contact rate in the lower levels in the minors. Like, I don't want anything to do with that guy. But 2023, 76% contact. This year, 76% contact again. It's like I believe it's more sustainable now. The fact that we've seen 2 years of Lawrence Butler having, improved contact and it's stuck. So young athletic guy. I'm certainly in. So
and the better ballpark too.
Yeah. All right, Martin, what you got?
Well, I had to pop on here because this will be my third appearance on the show, and I have to catch Welshie and Blessing and those guys. 2 questions. The first one, I was working through my rankings earlier. Shout out with Mayo. Mayo, ironically, is the guy that I've got prospect fatigue on. How do you approach that when you're doing your rankings, especially when they've had a limited sample, but an unproductive sample like Mayo did in his first stint in the majors. How do you approach that? And then how do you evaluate those guys that you get fatigued on, like a Michael Busch? Had kind of a classic example, but once he finally got the opportunity, he really showed out. So what's your thoughts on prospect fatigue, and how do you guys approach that?
Okay, go on.
So, yeah, we have to remember that prospect development is not linear. Like we say that with guys like the Oakland guys, a little bit older, kind of breaking out. Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler, Michael Busch, another example. When is Michael Busch now? Is he 27 yet?
Yeah, he's 26, 27.
Yeah, so we just have to remember, focus on the profile, and just kind of I try to eliminate all the other noise. Like Michael Busch, I can look all right, he's got power, and he's shown that he can walk, and the contact skills, kind of fluctuated, but I kind of look at the profile and remember why was a guy like Kobe Mayo, what made him a top 10 caliber prospect to begin with. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's different in every case. Like prospect fatigue happens in several different ways. Bush, he was an old prospect because he was blocked by a really good team. Where to break in with the Dodgers, you have to be 55 on the scouting scale. You have to be really good to break in with the Dodgers team. And Bush just didn't find the opportunities. So naturally, people are going to get fatigued. And I still think people will look at it. It's funny because now people are like, oh, the Cubs they just lost the trade so bad because Zaire Hope, a guy who hasn't been out of single A, is out here dominating. And Jackson Ferris, who has major walk issues, had some pretty good numbers this year. But Michael Busch had a really good year for the Cubs this year. Yeah. I mean, he hit 21 homers. He had 28 doubles. He did some good things. I think that, it's funny just to hear that narrative. But from a prospect fatigue standpoint, I think that it's just being open-minded and looking at circumstances and saying, for Michael Busch, his circumstance was being in an org that's just really good and hard to break in. In a Kobe Mayo case, it's another situation where it's a very good org. He's kind of blocked. I put 0 into what a player like Kobe Mayo did in 48 plate appearances in the majors. Really could care less about that. Just given the spot that he was thrown into, he was brought up in the midst of a playoff race where he had to perform. And I think there's a lot of pressure on a guy that's, he was 22 to step into that spot. And, I look back at what he did all year and look at the contact gains that Kobe Mayo made, and they're pretty substantial. I mean, he looks like a guy right now that can be a 50 hit and easily 60 power, and contact rates kind of back that. He ran, an 83% in zone contact. The chase rates have gone down throughout his career, and we know the power's pretty immense there. He ran a 90th percentile of 107, which is better than plus range. He topped out at 115 this year, that's big boy power. And so, I think when looking at a player like a Mayo, I look at the bigger picture and say it may take him a little while, and I think prospect fatigue is going to even set in even more if he doesn't start the year with the team. But that creates buy-in opportunities. If you're in a dynasty league, that's a great buy-in opportunity. I think that, Kobe Mayo is a great offseason dynasty buy, and I may even wait longer because if it's looking like he won't break camp in spring training, people are just going to really sour on a guy like Kobe Mayo, and that's your opportunity to buy and profit because they look at a guy and say, he was so bad for 48 plate appearances in the majors. He's not a major leaguer. The Orioles don't think he's a major leaguer. And the reality, it's he's a 22-year-old that's just a little blocked, and he needs a little bit more development time, and he's going to be really good. So hope that answers your question.
Second question. Obviously, we're out here at the Arizona Fall League. I know you guys got your first live looks yesterday at Andrew Painter, which I'm sure was exciting. Yeah. He's going to be a helium name in redraft, obviously, now that he's healthy. He was going to break camp in the rotation in 23. Yeah. Two questions. One, how does he look? What do you think about, how he's recovering from his TJ? And then what do you think is a realistic expectation for him this year? Do you think they're going to slow play him because he's still, 20 years old? Or do you think they're going to kind of push him as needed?
I think a lot of it's going to come down to how he looks in spring training. I think if he's dominating the spring training, do I think he's going to be in the rotation to start the year? I'd bet on no. But could we see, a lot of people have asked me what the innings will look like for him so hard to say, but I kind of sit on like that 110 to 120 range. And, could he come out and go Paul Skeens all gangbusters? Sure. But that's a little obviously Skeens had one of the best rookie years we've ever seen from a pitcher, so it's really risky to say that. But that's the level of upside Painter has. I mean, you look at his last full healthy year back in 2022, which feels like forever ago now, the strikeout to walk ratio in the minors was like 35%. It was like 41% strikeout rate and like a 5% walk rate because he can miss bats. He can limit the walks as well. Like that level of bat missing and, command and control is something you just don't see that often. Like these are the ace, these are the Cy Young caliber guys, and he looked good. He was sitting like 96, 97 with the fastball. I think he had 99 one time, mixed in some curves, some sliders. I think he had like one or two changeups, but he was missing bats, and you can see he's still kind of getting back into it. He only went 33 pitches, which is kind of where he's been going the last few starts. But I think they're slowly getting him back into there, and you're starting to see the Andrew Painter of old. I think he's going to have, maybe he won't be up until May or June, but I think you're going to see a really good rookie year from him.
I don't see any reason he doesn't take the Paul Skeens route, start the year in AAA.
Yeah.
Skeens threw 133 innings in the majors, and he was productive enough to be one of the best pitchers in baseball. So that wouldn't shock me. Philly's a contending team year in and year out. They're going to want Painter ready for the postseason and have him be able to fully go in the postseason, not limited at all.
Yep.
So I think that factors in. But I also think you're looking at a team that could bring him up and let him throw 4 innings, let him build throughout the year, and he keeps that innings limit lower.
Yep.
I mean, the last 2 starts he's out here, he's thrown 3 innings. And put a little asterisk by that because he threw 33 pitches for 3 innings yesterday when we saw him. He was highly efficient. I think he had a 6-pitch inning in the third. It was just very efficient. The stuff looks good. You also have to factor in that pitch shapes play completely different out here. Like the air just does things that it makes balls much more hittable, and hitters can square them up much easier. And you think about how pitches play in the Coors Field environment. I'm not saying it's to that extreme, but pitches play completely different out here in the AFL. And so I look at Painter's pitch data like pre-TJ, and then I want to compare it to now and see where he's at, but I can't do that because like the fastball is not going to ride as much. It's much more hittable because it's harder to ride a fastball out here in this air. But I look at Painter and see his velo back, and I'm like sitting 97 yesterday, touching 99. He touched triple digits in his first start out here. That's an encouraging sign. Yep. Also think it's important to look at and say, all right, at this point, we're 16 months post-TJ. Get to April, we're 20, 21 months post-TJ. I think he should be ready to go completely. Yep. And I think that command's something that typically pitchers get back later post-TJ. But I watched Painter. He missed 2 pitches yesterday. Just he kind of sailed a slider high. I think he missed another one down. But overall, I thought the command and locations were really good for Painter. I will say my concern was he allowed several pretty big fly balls. Alejandro Ozuna took him to the warning track in dead center. Again, the ball flies out here. The ball was flying yesterday. But I had to go back and remind myself, Painter did allow a lot of fly balls in the minors, which is something just to even factor in. We look at all the good, and then, something like that, he got barreled up. I was talking to Chris Blessing back there earlier. He got barreled up a couple times. And so, it's just something to factor in. He's 12 innings back, 10, 12 innings back from TJ. I think we look at the things and say there's a lot of positives to take away from what we've seen so far. Yep. I think he's going to be ready to go. He's got a really good 4-pitch mix. I think it's 4 potential plus offerings. If the fastball shape is interesting, I think that's kind of the biggest question mark. But when you have the velo he does, you remember in the spring, everybody, Paul Skeens' fastball shape sucks. Like, it's dead zone. It won't work. At some point it's overanalyzation. Like, Painter's going to sit upper 90s, and you can get away with more shape stuff when you sit in the upper 90s, as we've seen with Skeens. So, yep. I think Painter is completely just who he was. Like, there's no super red flags for me, like, from a stuff standpoint coming back. It's like the velos are there, like, the breaking balls look good, and, like, those are encouraging signs from somebody that's, throwing their first game action from TJ. So I think that's really encouraging. Any other questions? You want to come get the mic and get you on the show? Be part of the Tool Shed podcast.
I was just wondering, you mentioned positives to look at. Was there anything positive for Noelvi Marte that you saw? It was a pretty dismal comeback for him.
Eric, you're the Noelvi guy. You got anything?
Yeah, that did,
Sorry.
that didn't work out well. He was probably my most drafted guy in 2024. And you look at, I can't, like I was saying with Holiday, there's no metrics I can look at, like, oh, hey, that's the reason why he's that bounce back. But Marte has power. He's a good athlete. He can steal some bags. We saw that in the minor leagues. I don't think he was, good because he took whatever that substance was that word I can't even say, or spell. But he's still got to get a good amount of run this year, so they're going to let him try to kind of bounce back in 2025. Great ballpark. Like, they need him to be what they thought he could be, because last year it was funny. We were early March. We were like, oh, where are all these guys going to play? And then boom, suspension for Noelvi. Boom, McLean shoulder surgery. So that kind of worked itself out, but. There's no big competition to his job, so I think he'll get the chance to work through it. And you saw glimpses here and there. They were very small, but there's still a lot of talent in there. But yeah, I can't sit here and be like, oh, he got unlucky, or there's no like metrics I can use to really back up why I think he's gonna bounce back. But I still believe in the talents, and I think he's gonna be. I mean, he's pull up his ADP real quick
Probably
here.
pretty low.
Well, I have it filtered to the second baseman. Third base, 265 right now.
That's
He's
higher than I thought.
20, like the 28th third baseman off the board. Yeah, I'll take a shot on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the positives I saw with Marte, he athletically still looked good. He stole bases efficiently. He ran 85% zone contact. And when you look at a player like Noelvi Marte, you probably don't see a player that makes consistent contact. And somebody he has for the last few years. Yeah. I think he was pressing a lot. I mean, you come back from a suspension, you feel like you got a chip on your shoulder and got something to prove.
Yep.
Why do I believe that? His swing rates were way up. The chase rate went up 10 percentage points. Like, that's a sign to me that a guy's pressing to prove something coming back from the suspension. So hopefully the offseason to get your mind right. Because you think mentally that probably, like, we don't often talk about the mental side, but mental aspect of the game is, the majority of it, if we're being honest. Like, it's why a player like Jared Kelenic hasn't succeeded. It's all mental. It's not a skill issue with Jared Kelenic. But yeah, I think that when you get suspended like that, I can't imagine. So a lot of pressure on the guy like that. I think he'll be fine coming back. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask a bonus question?
Sure.
And I don't think it's part of your itinerary to discuss today, but is there anyone top of mind that hasn't made the major leagues yet for 2025 on your top 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 prospect list that you can foresee will make the major leagues this year, like Marcelo Mayer or Roman Anthony or someone? Yeah,
if they bring up Walcott, man.
Again, like I said, this is a bonus question, so I understand this is not your topic today, but
I mean,
so I'm throwing you a curveball here. I'm sure you got it ready to go. So
it's okay. No, I mean, I think now we've seen prospect promotions move at a rapid rate now, so you're going to see guys move quicker. We saw it with this past year's class with so many rookies. So, I mean, Roman Anthony, does he break camp on opening day? Probably not, but is he a late April call-up? I think that's a real possibility. I look at a Christian Campbell in the same org. I think Christian Campbell could be the opening day second baseman. I mean, the Red Sox mixed and matched second base all year. They never found a guy. I know people love David Hamilton, the fantasy community, for some reason. David Hamilton's not a good player. I mean, just not. He's not a good baseball player. He's not going to be the second baseman. I think Christian Campbell could be the guy. I mean, we saw the rapid ascension. He's funky as it gets with a swing. It looks weird. It's not traditional, but, I mean, he makes it work, and he makes a ton of contact. He's an athletic, like, wide receiver build. Like, he looks like he'd be an NFL wide receiver. So I think he could be I look at Emmanuel Rodriguez if he's healthy. I think that's a big if because he's been healthy, like, none of his career. So that's a big – I also think you're seeing a push with draft guys. You see Nick Kurtz out here. You see Jack Caglione out here. The A's are an interesting spot where I think Nick Kurtz could be up. If he's up by June, July, I wouldn't be shocked because Kurtz is such an advanced hitter. I think Kurtz was as advanced as any hitter in the draft class. When we look at it, I was talking to people in the hall about it metrically. I mean, you look at a Travis Bazzana or J.J. Weatherholt, Kurt's stacked up with him contact-wise, chase-wise, everything you want to see there. Power-wise, Kurt's EVs were as good as Jack Caglione. Like, all those guys, Kurt's was he checks all the boxes. And, is Tyler Soderstrom the answer at first base for Oakland? Not Oakland anymore. Sorry, I keep saying that. But I think Kurtz is up. Do I think Caglione could be up? Potentially. Why else send a guy out here? I think that you look at that and say that's a big possibility. But I think Dalton Rushing is a guy that I absolutely love. I took him first round in our rookie draft. That's the plug for our rookie draft panel on Saturday night you should come to. Chris Blessing will be moderating, and we got quite a good crew. So I took Dalton Rushing in the first round of that. They moved him to outfield in September. That told me they really wanted him on the roster this year. I thought he was going to come up late in the year and be on the playoff roster. It didn't happen, but you look at somebody that can catch. Will Smith needs the days off. Will Smith, believe it or not, is over 30 now, and he's progressively going downhill a little bit. I think Will Smith can use the days off. Rushing can catch, and he plays some outfield. He DHs some. That's good for fantasy value because he's a catcher getting more reps. Rushing has consistently been one of the best hitters in baseball since he debuted as a professional. His exit velocities are elite. His contact rates are elite. The chase rates are really good. His quality of contact is so good. He hits the ball on ideal launch angles consistently. One of the best ex-Wobicons in baseball this year. Dalton Rushing, I think, is really good. So I'll save some for Eric. I know I'm just rambling here about guys that I love, but I'll give Eric some guys.
Well, I had two other names. I was like, I'm hoping he's not going to say those guys too. I'll just add two really quick because I know we're at time. Matt Shaw with the Cubs. I think he can play second, he can play third, he can play short. A guy that doesn't stand out in any one area, but is just good, average to above average across the board. A potential 2020 guy, maybe a guy that has dual eligibility or even trial eligibility. We'll see how the Cubs use him. And then Chase DeLauter. I love Chase DeLauter. I think he's a top 10 prospect when healthy. Obviously, the when healthy part has been the X factor there, and he has not been healthy a lot. But he has all the makings of a impact fantasy guy, the contact, the approach, the power, the speed. It's all there. So I think Shaw will be up, first, and then DeLauter up more, maybe May or June.
And don't let people tell you that Chase DeLauter's swing sucks because just because he doesn't follow through, his swing is on plane exceptionally well throughout the zone. He stays in the zone, the barrel's in through the zone exceptionally well. It's just a short follow through. But dude puts up plus exit velocity, so who cares? His shorter swing is not changing his power. And people say, it won't work. I posted a video of him this morning from yesterday. He had 2 doubles yesterday. Immediately comments, this swing sucks. It looks terrible. Dude, the dude's on plane more than most prospects. So you'll see a lot of narratives that just aren't true. Just being honest. Yeah. People will die on that hill for sure. So anyway, thank you all for being with us. Appreciate every one of you sticking with us through the show. And we will talk to you soon.